RSF's report says that this is the decisive decade for journalism, and your own life and the risks, the sacrifices you've made. You're living in Russia instead of in the United States. You can't go back. You could get arrested. You would get arrested if you went back to the US. These sacrifices that you've made to live by, to be a whistleblower, this seems to be what this decade is going to demand. Uh, what advice would you give to journalists, people who want to get the truth out?
Yeah, look, I spoke once with a very senior journalist who wrote it, one of these journalism reviews. And she told me something, and I was, quite early on in my notoriety here, and had very much, I did trust journalists and the institution of journalism to play their role, and I think they played it well in my case. But she said the more that she knows journalists, the less that she likes them. And, coming from someone who had worked in journalism, I thought this was a crazy thing. And it was because she felt that they were becoming cynical. And I actually agree with her to an extent there. But as I've spent more years, this happened more than 5 years ago, I think, I've realized that it's not journalists, it's all of us. We feel like we know everything. That little Google search box, the accessibility of information, allows us to pull up any argument to support our own pre-existing, cognitive biases. But how does that change? Somebody out there, somewhere, cares enough to make the argument that no, actually, all of you are wrong. You think you understand what's happening, but actually you look at this, and this, and this, and this, and what do you think now? And I think that's really the heart of journalism. And I think that's what it takes to change this. We talk about blowing the whistle. We talk about the sacrifices that I made. There were over 30,000 people working at the NSA. Not all of them knew what I did, but there were plenty of people who should have known or could have known, and they could have done something, and they didn't. For me, it wasn't about, standing up and saving the world. I haven't saved the world, and I don't think that one person can, but what we can do is we can make it better, one step at a time. We can do something for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, to say, look, I know you think that, but I have seen evidence that actually something very different is happening, and I think it's alarming, and I think we should do something about it. I think we should reconsider the path that we're on. And that's what this is. We talked about this feeling of disempowerment. Whether you're a journalist, whether you're an ordinary person, the world is facing an extraordinary slate of threats on basically every axis of progress. We are at the beginning of an age of regression if we do nothing. But progress can be sustained, and the way we do that is we recognize that, people talk about reform and this potential to fix things, and they think, well, if we just wait, eventually they'll wake up and things will get better, the people in charge. But power doesn't listen. Power only responds. Reform only occurs if it is pushed upon institutions. It is something that is willed into existence by a collective civil ideal. And there is no class in the world that is more capable of developing that kind of popular consensus than journalists. And I think when we look at this, particularly for those who've been in journalism for a while, who are feeling that cynicism, is go, look, you're right, the world is in a tough place, but it's only going to get better one way, and that's with you. Yeah, you can start and make a difference one way. You can stand up, you can blow the whistle, you can, whistleblowing isn't about who you are. It's not about your skill set. It's about what you can prove. It's about what you've seen. And this is what I think journalists are good at. And this is what everybody has a role in, you know. Wherever you work in your office, whether you work for the government, whether you work for the company, whether you work, you know, at a convenience store, if you see something that matters, and we all see things that matter in different parts of our lives, and you say, I can't ignore this, that's the beginning of something more. Tell somebody about it. Persuade them as best you can that this is something worth considering, and see if they agree with you. And if they do, you tell somebody else, you tell somebody else. Reform is a process that starts with you, but it does not end with you. We have to stop thinking in these binary terms where either we save the world or the world saves itself, but there's nothing we can do. Either we do everything or we do nothing. No, all we have to do is enough. And enough is a very little amount, but it's more than nothing. And I think